The swamp is a treacherous place.
Without further ado, let's start with AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. From January 3rd, it's not about drugs. If it was, Trump wouldn't have pardoned one of the largest narco traffickers in the world last month. It's about oil and regime change. And they need a trial now to pretend that it isn't, especially to distract from Epstein and skyrocketing healthcare costs. Well, a quick comment on the Epstein files. I'm also irritated that they still haven't released everything they were supposed to at the latest date, December the 19th, and we're still waiting. And apparently they discovered over 1 million Epstein-related documents in some dark room somewhere, which the DOJ and the FBI announced that, and they have to comb through all of it and redact all of the victims' names. So we're still waiting on that. We can't exactly throw too much flack at AOC for that. Skyrocketing healthcare costs, 100% the Democrats' fault because they gave us Obamacare, which took effect, in 2014, I think, or they, at least they started the process of getting it enacted back in 2009. And yeah, it's absolutely ruined our health insurance industry. And that was with 0 Republican votes. And when they extended the Obamacare subsidies, thanks to COVID, also had 0 Republican votes with that. And to add insult to injury, at least toward the Democrats, they were the ones who set the 3-year timeline for the Obamacare subsidies. It was the Democrats, not the Republicans, that set the Obamacare subsidies to expire at the end of 2025. Republicans had nothing to do with that. And yeah, so as far as Juan Orlando Hernandez, he's the individual that Trump pardoned. Trump claims he pardoned him because he had been treated very harshly and unfairly. And also the same goes with his trial, and suggested that the prosecution was a setup by the Biden administration, although there's no clear evidence that I know of that was provided to support that assertion. And if that's not factual, definitely let me know in the comments, because I don't think that Trump, really substantiated specific evidence or anything with regard to pardoning him. I just know that he was a member of the, probably leader if he was the president of the conservative party of the country. So I don't know if that also swayed his decision to pardon him or not. I don't think that was a very wise idea, because he was put on trial in a U.S. court and they found him guilty, even if the evidence wasn't ironclad evidence, even if it was based on testimony. That's how the system runs. People can be convicted and imprisoned based on pure testimony and no physical evidence. It happens all the time. All right, so anyway, let's move on to Hakeem Jeffries. Oh yeah, by the way, almost 270,000 likes for that, man. That's a lot of likes. Of course, AOC, she's got 20, 30 million followers. Or no, hell no, she only got 12. Okay, I thought she had way more than that. 27,000 comments. There's so many of these to go through. Maybe I'll jump into some of these comments here and there. But like I said, there's 30, maybe 40 of these to go through. So probably don't want to spend too much time dwelling on each one of these posts. But anyways, it comes from Timu Obama. The Venezuelan people elected Edmundo Gonzalez to run their country, not Pete Hegseth or Marco Rubio. The American people do not support another expensive foreign war that risks the lives of our men and women in uniform. First of all, there is no war in Venezuela. There wasn't a war in Venezuela against the U.S. We got Maduro, and that's that. Now, I know Trump made comments about how the U.S. is going to be involved in a transition of power, and we don't know what that's going to look like. As far as sending in the military to occupy the country, that probably might need congressional approval. I know presidents, they've used the military without congressional approval all the time. In fact, 43 out of 45 presidents have done just that. They have used the military without getting congressional approval. You can Google that, and it will return that number, 43. And the only 2 who didn't use the military were Zachary Taylor and William Harrison, and the main reason for that was because they just happen to have the shortest terms as president among all U.S. presidents. They just weren't in office long enough to get to that point where they needed the military, and they decided to use it without getting Congress's permission. So, yeah, anyway, aside from that, it sounds like Hakeem Jeffries isn't all that upset about Maduro getting caught. He did say the Venezuelan people elected Edmundo Gonzalez, which they did, by 70% to 30%. Anyway, Senator Cory Booker says, today, many leaders will rightly condemn President Donald Trump's unlawful and unjust actions in Venezuela, and I join them. So Cory Booker's obviously pro-Maduro. He absolutely probably worships the ground that Maduro walks on, because so many of these Democrats are essentially card-carrying communists at this point. So if anything, I'm sure they're envying Maduro and how he was able to clinch power and just and hang on to it for as long as he did, because I believe that's exactly what Democrats want to do. Except in the American system, they have to achieve that ability by just brainwashing their constituency, really, because they've been working overtime to do just that. But just as glaring and far more damning is Congress's ongoing abdication of its constitutional duty. For almost a year now, the legislative branch has failed to check a president who repeatedly violates his oath, disregards the law, and endangers American interests at home and abroad. Time and time again, Congress, now led by Republicans, has chosen spineless complicity over its sworn responsibilities, from the reckless leaking of classified information that put American troops at risk to the illegal use of military force, destroying vessels and killing people in the Caribbean and the Pacific without congressional authorization. This has been a stunning absence of accountability. That is hilarious. So not only is Cory Booker pro-Maduro, but he's also pro-narco-terrorism, because those were the individuals that we were blowing out of the water, narco-terrorists. And they released all the footage of all the drones that were involved with bombing all of these narco-terrorism vessels. And I've shown them on my show, The Swamp. I think every single one of them, they've conducted something like 25 of these strikes at this point since September. And you can clearly see on the boat they're transporting drugs. No nets, no fishing poles, or fishing rods. There's no, like, it's not a boat full of people that they're transporting. All you see is just bricks and bricks of, I wonder what that could be. Probably drugs. So, not to mention that the Department of War, the Trump administration, they've got intelligence assets on the ground in Venezuela who are coordinating with the military. It's all this big coordination thing. You know how the U.S. government does things. I mean, how many intelligence agencies do we have? Like 20, 25 of them. So, yeah, reckless leaking of classified information, that's a riot, because Democrats are engaged with that all the time. I mean, you know, whenever the mainstream media says, well, anonymous sources tell us this, tell us that, where do you think they're getting that information from? Well, I suppose they could be making it up outright, but I bet a lot of the times they're getting them from Democrats, because Democrats leak shit all the time. All right, no hearings, no serious investigations, no enforcement of checks and balances, no accountability. Again and again, the president has exceeded his authority, defied congressional intent, trampled the separation of powers, broken the law, while Congress looked away in cowardice and submission. Again, 43 out of 45 presidents did not use Congress to invoke military action. Republicans in Congress own this corrosive collapse of our constitutional order. With only a handful of honorable exceptions, they have bent themselves into the will of Donald Trump, afraid to state in public the feelings that they often communicate privately. That submission, this abandonment of independent judgment and constitutional courage, now stands as one of the greatest dangers to our nation and to the global order America claims to defend. Oh my God, dude, he just goes on and fucking on, man. Should I really read all of this? Good grief. Let's see. I'll just roll through it quickly. Nicholas Maduro is a brutal dictator who has committed grave abuses. Okay, well, he put that out there, but I mean, he's a brutal dictator, but I absolutely hate what Trump did. He should have left him in power forever and ever. The United States military remains the most capable fighting force on earth, and our praiseworthy service members carry out their orders with professionalism and excellence, but none of that suspends the Constitution. The Constitution is unambiguous. Congress has the power and responsibility to authorize use of military force and declare war. There was no war declared, dummy. Congress has a duty of oversight. Congress must serve as a check, not a rubber stamp to the president. On this count, Congress has failed. I'm sure that Congress, well, look, after this military operation to get Maduro, Congress will be briefed, because I'm sure Congress is always briefed. Like Libya, Benghazi, for instance. Obama didn't get Congress's permission. It was a unilateral decision. Obama just said, yeah, let's just go into Libya. And I mean, I'm sure that he didn't have anywhere near the justification to do that as Trump did with Maduro. I mean, look, Libya is not even on our side of the frickin' hemisphere, or not even in our hemisphere. We face an authoritarian-minded president who acts with dangerous growing impunity. He has shown a willingness to defy court orders, violate the law, ignore congressional intent, and shred basic norms of decency and democracy. This pattern will continue unless the Article I branch of the government, especially Republican congressional leadership, finds the courage to act. They must stop behaving as partisan puppets and start acting as patriotic constitutional stewards. What happened today is wrong. Congressional Republicans would say so immediately if a Democratic president had done the same. Obama, hello. Their silence is surrender, and in that surrender lie the seeds of our democratic unraveling. There are 3 years left in the administration from the pardoning of individuals who violently attack police officers. Oh my God, dude, that is so fucking hilarious. ICE, their law enforcement, their federal law enforcement, and let's see, Customs and Border Protection, U.S. Border Patrol, also just everyday police officers and sheriffs. I mean, he means to try to lead us to believe that conservatives and Republicans and right wingers engage in violently attacking police officers more than the left. You fucking kidding? It's night and day. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find, I would say, even one conservative, maybe even across the entire last year, assaulting an officer while attempting to overturn our election to this latest extrajudicial assault on another nation's sovereignty. The damage will continue unless it is confronted. Well, I think if you asked an everyday Venezuelan, I mean, look, like yesterday, I did a 3.5 hour video yesterday showing all kinds of videos from the bombings or the military exercise or the mission, the process of getting Maduro. Also, lots of Venezuelans celebrating on the ground, not only in Venezuela, but also in Miami and in New York City, and I'm sure other places in the country. I would say the Venezuelan people, almost 100%, were in absolute celebration when they learned that Maduro was captured. Enough is enough! Congress has failed. If it is not too late to redeem the harm done by a year of submission and silence, Congress must act now. It must reassert its constitutional authority, restore the rule of law, and stop this president before further injuries done to our democracy and our republic. All right, whatever, Cory Booker. Clearly, this was on a Saturday because he had nothing else going on, literally nothing else going on, because he wrote all kinds of yada yada this and yada yada that. Communists across the globe are in tears while the people of Venezuela celebrate. Image rendered by Grok. First time I've seen Democrats upset about arresting a president. Yeah. SDFU retard. I suck. Hilarious. You actually think people are going to read all that BS you just typed? Yeah. I did. I think because I had to, because I don't want to leave anything out. I don't want to lead anybody to believe that I'm being, overtly biased toward one direction or the other. So if I've got a post in front of me, almost 100% of the time, even if it's reluctant, I'm going to read the whole thing just because it's right here on screen. Might as well read it while it's here. Sit this one out, piggy. Yeah, I will say reading that was an absolute and enormous waste of time. Time that we're not going to get back, unfortunately. Maybe I should have saved that post for the dead last post of this video, but all right, it's over. Democrats are Soros's puppet. We did not invade. We executed an arrest warrant, which we did. The arrest warrant was taken out in 2020. A judge signed Maduro's arrest warrant back in 2020 for narco-terrorism, among other charges. So what the U.S. military was doing, we were simply executing that warrant, the arrest warrant. So when we went and picked him up, we actually brought along law enforcement officers who work for the DOJ. It wasn't 100% a military effort. They actually sent in DOJ officers to execute that arrest warrant because I'm sure somewhere buried in federal law, they have to do that. Maybe they have to have some representative or a non-military representative of some law enforcement agency in order to execute an arrest warrant, especially if it's abroad. That's why law enforcement accompanied special forces. Well, there you go. Nicholas Maduro was indicted in New York and will face trial. That's not innovation. That's law enforcement. Blah, blah, blah. Not one person is reading your distorted worldview diatribe. The Venezuelan people are dancing in the streets, which they are. And very, very reluctantly and painfully, I did read all of it. You're just wetting your knickers that you weren't able to leak this raid to the press and get our special forces killed. Yeah, I wholeheartedly believe that if Trump were to go to Congress, even in a classified setting, over this whole operation to get Maduro, there is no doubt in anybody's mind who pay attention to politics on a daily basis that Democrats would have leaked that thing like crazy. They would have leaked it like an ancient fucking dike. It would have been all over the mainstream news. Probably not even an hour after that meeting was held, it would have already been leaked, and they would have been talking about it. Oh my God, Maduro is about to get kidnapped by Trump. All right, Congress is useless. You all do nothing for America. You spend more time on vacation and bitching and complaining. Do nothing, clowns, all of you. I mean, I can't say that I totally disagree with that. Republicans haven't done nearly as much as they should have been doing. Codifying a lot of Trump's executive orders into law. the Saves Act, which I think I got the right one with regard to the requiring voter ID and a whole bunch of other requirements with regard to voting, absolutely should be put on the floor. But for some reason, Mike Johnson doesn't want to do that. I don't know why. So, all right. Anyway, I don't want to dwell on Cory Booker too much. We'll move on to Adam Schiff. So, hold on. Going too far. All right, so he says this argument should send a chill down the spine of every American. By this logic, the president could send our military anywhere in the world and be the sole decider of when to risk war. Not the American people, not Congress. What's to stop China from indicting and capturing the leaders of Taiwan tomorrow? Probably not much. I would say if they really wanted to, they could. What's to stop China from capturing Taiwanese leaders? Not really much of anything. I would say the United States, we're standing in the way because they know there'd be hell to pay if they actually go forward and do that. So there is no war, at least not as of now. And again, I don't want to keep bringing up Benghazi over and over again. You know, capturing or killing. Actually, we didn't capture Omar Gaddafi. We actually killed him. He was shot and killed. So, you know, Trump at least didn't kill Maduro. At least he was brought to justice. I mean, that sure would have been nice if Obama brought Omar Gaddafi into the U.S. court system and have justice served. But no, he didn't want to do that. He wanted to kill him instead and not give him his day in court. So obviously, Democrats aren't squeaky clean either. And again, for the third or fourth time now, 43 presidents, they've used the military without Congress's permission. Again, you can Google it. Maybe I'll Google it, and I'll just show it on here. And so this is from J.D. Vance. And PSA for everyone saying this was illegal. Maduro has multiple indictments in the United States for narco-terrorism. You don't get to avoid justice for drug trafficking in the United States because you live in a palace in Caracas. Yeah, and not only does he live in a palace at Caracas, he was pretending to be the president. So, yeah, that was happening too. All right, so let me open up this tab real quick. Might as well get this out of the way because I've already brought it up a few times. How many U.S. presidents have used the military without congressional approval? Let's see. AI mode. Oh, I don't want to see the links. Let me go to AI mode. I just want to get a straight answer from Google. All right. How many have used the military? Historically, 43 out of 45 U.S. presidents. Can you read that on the screen? 43 out of 45 presidents have used military force without a formal congressional declaration of war. The only exceptions were William Henry Harrison, who died shortly after taking office, and Zachary Taylor, whose brief presidency saw no significant military engagements. So there you have it. More than 108 authorizations of military force against foreign adversaries have been carried out via executive authority rather than formal declarations. So I would say the precedent has more than been set. If they're saying 43 out of 45, that would mean even George Washington himself. Even George Washington decided to use military force without using Congress to get their blessing or whatever you want to call it. So there you go. Because you're going to be seeing this many, many times with these Democrat posts. They're going to be saying that over and over again. You didn't get Congress's permission. You are a dictator. This is the most evil thing ever. How dare you? That's never happened before. All right, so Senator Dick Durbin, Nicholas Maduro repeatedly denied the will of the Venezuelan people, including when 2/3 of them voted for an end to decades of political and economic ruin and criminality. However, I disagree with Trump. Well, because he's a Democrat. No matter what Trump does, they have to disagree with it. Use of military forces without congressional approval. Here we go again, around this carousel again. And worry deeply about this administration's follow-through on foreign policy interventions. The Trump administration must provide briefings for all members of Congress as soon as possible this week. I'm sure that there will be briefings because the operation's over with. And, I'm sure if I plug that into Google, after using the military without Congress's approval, how many presidents did not brief Congress after they used the military? I would assume it's probably not a very big number. I fully expect the Trump administration to sit down Congress and listen to them scream and complain and whine and, thrash their fists about. And then once they're done throwing their big hissy fit, their little temper tantrum, then the Trump administration can explain to them exactly what happened. And also remind them that not a single U.S. Military serviceman was killed. Also, no civilians were killed either. At least not the official number. I believe that there were some who were killed during the operation, but they were Maduro's bodyguards. So obviously, All right, so Bernie Sanders, President Trump does not have the constitutional authority to attack another country. When 60... See again, Bernie Sanders, what about Obama? What about Benghazi? All right, when 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, he should focus on the crisis at home and his illegal military adventurism and stop trying to run Venezuela for big oil. Oh, dude, Venezuela, they got so much oil. They have an estimated $17 trillion worth of oil under the ground. I believe it's the largest oil reserves in the world. So that's a lot of money, man. That's like half of our national deficit. Now, would I agree that we're justified in just drilling it and taking it? No, because you still got the Venezuelan people to consider. I mean, technically, it's really their oil. Of course, I mentioned this. I actually posted this on quite a few of these Democrat posts because I just couldn't help myself. 43 U.S. presidents took military action without congressional approval. Bernie is mad that a socialist state was just dismantled and soon will become capitalist. Cope harder. You had all of the authority in the world a year ago, and you did nothing for the American people. You just went all in on importing future Americans. He's protecting Americans from drugs and solving a problem for the Venezuelan people in the process. You should watch and learn. Absolutely. Maduro, Democrats, Brango Garcia, hilarious, unconstitutional. I do not think that word means what you think it means. Right. They don't. They just, they want to give it whatever definition that fits their narrative today. Every morning I wake up and feel so grateful that I'm not a brainwashed anti-American liberal piece of shit. He said it, not me. All right, which one of your homes are you in tonight? Yeah, that's actually a pretty good point because Bernie Sanders, doesn't he own like 4 houses now? Like he's always talking about, distributing the wealth back to the people. And, there shouldn't be any rich people here or universal health care. Everybody should be equal. Communism is what we all should be embracing. But yet he's got like 4 houses and he's a multimillionaire. And yeah, he's not leading by example. So why would you want to blindly follow somebody who can't even lead by example? STFD, Bernie. Oh, yeah, see, here you go. They asked Grok. 43 out of 45 presidents have authorized military force, including ground troop deployments to foreign countries without a formal congressional declaration of war. The exceptions are Harrison and Taylor. Okay, yeah, we already got that. Hey, old man, Nicholas Maduro is an indicted narco-terrorist facing U.S. federal charges in New York. Not a prisoner of war. The Geneva Convention's protections for POWs, Article 13, apply to combatants in international armed conflicts, not criminals arrested under domestic jurisdiction, even if their arrest involved military action. Posting a photo of a captured fugitive blindfolded and restrained for security during transport is standard law enforcement practice worldwide. No media humiliation violation here. Did he actually mention that? Because, yeah, there's somebody, there is at least one Democrat I came across who said that. Yeah, I don't know. He didn't say that, so I don't know who exactly they were replying to. But, yeah, absolutely correct. There were several Democrats that said that they were humiliating Nicholas Maduro by sharing a photo, and I'm sure I'll come across that photo. That photo is going to be in this video somewhere. I'm sure we're going to come across it several times. But he's sitting on a plane. He's got what appears to be old man sunglasses, and he's sitting in a Nike tracksuit. Looks like he's got handcuffs on. He's holding a bottle of water, and he's just in a seated position on a plane. And a lot of Democrats were saying that they posted that photo, and the Trump administration posted that to humiliate him. And that's not part of the Geneva Convention. He's a prisoner of war. And no, he's not a prisoner of war. He's an indicted criminal and an illegitimate president. He wasn't even a president of Venezuela because he lost. And they posted the photo, in my opinion, to show proof of life, because that's exactly what the vice president of Venezuela said when they learned that Nicolas Maduro was captured by U.S. forces overnight. One of the first statements she made was that they must prove to us that Maduro is in fact still alive, because to be fair, the United States government does have a history of killing dictators that they try to apprehend. So I don't think there's more than probably a very small handful of people who were running a country that the United States captured alive. Well, I guess what Saddam Hussein, he was captured alive. I mean, he didn't stay alive for very long. But anyway, yeah, so like I said, they were the U.S. military, you could argue, to that vice president, who is also, I'm sure, illegitimate, that we weren't doing that out of humiliation. We were doing that to prove to you that he is indeed alive, because here's a picture of him sitting on a U.S. plane right now. Anyway, yeah, I was kind of hoping I'd come across that photo, but all right, whatever. So we'll move on to the next thing. I know it's going to be on here somewhere. I know it. All right, so we're going to Eric Doherty. It's official. Democrats are evil. So he's referencing Rep. Becca Balint, Democrat, on Trump capturing Maduro. Look, I'm angry on behalf of Americans, Congress, and our service members who were put in harm's way. This is not necessary or legal. It was absolutely legal because the U.S. federal judge had signed an arrest warrant for the arrest of Nicholas Maduro for narco-terrorism charges almost 6 years ago. So he's had an ongoing indictment against him for a long time, and all we had to do was just capture him and bring him into American justice. But let's give this a quick listen.
Good morning, Jonathan. Look, I'm angry.
I'm angry.
On behalf of Americans,
I'm so
on
twiggered.
behalf of Congress, and most importantly, on behalf of our service members who were put in harm's way. And this was not necessary. This was not legal. And we saw this coming.
Well, if we saw this coming, then how come you didn't leak it to Nicholas Maduro? Look, Nicholas Maduro, he should have absolutely seen it coming, if anybody. I mean, we've had U.S. naval vessels parked right offshore from Venezuela for months at this point. We've been blowing up their narco-terrorism vessels right out of the water with their outboard motors transporting drugs from Venezuela to, I don't remember what island it was, like Turks and Caicos or something like that. You know, there's a nearby island country that they were trying to transport these drugs to. So he definitely knew that there was a military presence right offshore, a very large one. We had at least one aircraft carrier right offshore, if not two of them. So, yeah, definitely not a surprise. Yeah, absolutely legal, 100% legal, because we had an indictment, or have an indictment against him, an arrest warrant signed by a federal judge, for crying out loud. Rep. Pramila Jayapal, my full statement on Trump's illegal actions in Venezuela to kidnap a foreign leader, force regime change, and his plans to indefinitely occupy Venezuela. So, quick comment on the regime change. There is no regime change happening right now. The Venezuela people, they voted back in July of 2024 for president, and it wasn't Maduro. Maduro refused to step down. He clinched onto his power, and he just remained president, even though he wasn't elected president. He wasn't reelected president. So there is no regime change. What they want, or what they're doing, is simply putting the rightful president back into power, because it wasn't Maduro. So there is no regime change. Anyway, so she goes on to say Maduro was an illegitimate dictator. The fact alone does not give Trump and his administration the authority to invade Venezuela. Well, they didn't exactly invade Venezuela. They invaded the palace. They flew over Venezuela. Not sure if I call that a full-scale invasion. Kidnap him in the middle of the night. They didn't kidnap him. They arrested him, dumbass. And force regime change. Again, Maduro was not president. They're simply putting the rightful president in office. Something the U.S. had tried and failed to do so many times over. Really, how many times? Because I don't... Look, yeah, I guess you can make the argument that, like, the Obama administration with Libya, also George W. Bush with Iraq. I'm sure there's many other examples out there. But unlike all those times, you know, we did have a criminal indictment against Maduro, and he wasn't the president of Venezuela. So, and who knows how many Americans that his drugs have killed over the years. This was an illegal and unconstitutional attack overtaken by Trump without any authorization from Congress, 43 presidents, and with no plan for the future. If this were truly about stopping drug trafficking, Trump would have not recently pardoned the former Honduran president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who had been sentenced to 45 years in prison for his role in the drug trafficking scheme that smuggled 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. Look, I got questions about that too. Not sure why Trump did that. That was kind of a stupid thing to do, not without giving clear and precise reasons exactly why he did that, other than him saying that he was treated unfairly. He had a sham trial, so on and so forth. Don't really know a whole lot about it. Honestly, I don't really agree with what he did. I just find that to be a little peculiar. Let's see, quote, Congress alone has the power to authorize war. There was no war. That was not a war. That was an arrest that was done with the help of the U.S. military. Republicans need to step up to do their constitutional duty and join Democrats in ensuring that Congress reasserts our authority. The implications otherwise are dire. Any rogue leader of any country can decide who they want to take out at any time. Obama. The American people have said over and over again that they do not want another war. Trump lied to the American... Well, look, okay, if the American people don't want another war, then why the fuck do you keep supporting Ukraine? Why the hell did you keep approving funds to go to Ukraine in the amount of countless billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars? Trump lied to the American people when he said he would get us out of endless wars and instead would focus on making life affordable for Americans. Nothing could be further from the truth. This is once again about oil, power, and greed, but not bettering the lives of Americans or leading the world toward diplomacy and peace. Congress must intervene before Trump's actions further destabilize the region. All right, more hypocrisy. Of course, I would expect nothing less. Ian Jager says Democrat Rep. Ilhan Omar blames the United States for the problems in Venezuela, not Nicholas Maduro. She literally has no idea what she's talking about, and I would probably fully agree, except I haven't seen this yet, so I'm sure at the end of this 36 seconds, we probably will conclude that she doesn't have a fucking clue what she's talking about, so let's hear her out.
A lot of the policies that we have put in place has kind of helped lead the devastation in Venezuela, and we've sort of set the stage for where we are arriving today. This particular bullying and the use of sanctions to eventually intervene and make regime change really does not help the people of countries like Venezuela, and it certainly does not help, and it's not in the interest of the United States.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like the words of a communist at all. The policies, the American policies, and we've just been ruthlessly bullying Venezuela. All right, so we got this from Governor J.B. Pritzker, who's the governor of Illinois. Donald Trump's unconstitutional military action in Venezuela is putting our troops in harm's way with no long-term strategy. The American people deserve a president focused on making their lives more affordable. Venezuela troops, harm's way, lives more affordable. I'm not sure how he connects those two directly, but whatever. Senator Mark Kelly, Trump thinks acting like Putin makes him look strong, but what he did in Venezuela has strategic implications he doesn't understand. China could try to use it to justify going after Taiwan, or Russia could use it to justify escalation in Ukraine or even elsewhere. Trump doesn't get that, and it makes Americans and our allies and partners less safe. All right, so moving on to Congressman Maxwell Alejandro, and he says, what President Trump is doing in Venezuela is illegal, dangerous, and outside the bounds of his constitutional authority. This is a moment that carries many feelings across the Venezuelan diaspora. Nicholas Maduro was a brutal dictator and an authoritarian, but the Democrats seem to just absolutely love him for some reason. He has repressed, jailed, disappeared, and murdered his people for over a decade. I stand against authoritarian no matter the nation. Yeah, but I hate what Trump did. Maduro should absolutely still be in power forever and ever. No president can unilaterally drag our nation into a war without congressional authorization, and his claim that the U.S. is now going to run the country of Venezuela until a so-called proper transition takes place is unacceptable and unconstitutional. All right, well, since they keep throwing constitutional authority, illegal, it's dangerous, Trump has no right to do that, let's take a look at this question that I posed to Grok. Provide a list of all instances of U.S. presidents using the military to overthrow a leader of a nation without congressional approval. And it put together quite the list for me. So let's see. If it's organized by a year, country, the leader that was targeted, the U.S. president who did so, a brief description of what happened, and the success. And spoiler alert, they were all a success. So it began way back in 1903, the country of Panama, with Theodore Roosevelt. And Roosevelt supported Panamanian separatists with U.S. warship to facilitate independence and canal control. Also in 1903, this time in Honduras, also Roosevelt, the Marine Corps intervention supporting a coup by Manuel Bonilla. And in Cuba, also Theodore Roosevelt, so there's three by Theodore Roosevelt, and he invoked Platt Amendment, invaded and occupied Cuba, and installed a new government. And again, according to Grok, all of this was done without congressional approval, or at least formal congressional approval. Nicaragua, from William Howard Taft, 1909 and 1910, sent troops to support rebels, enforced a resignation, installed a new leader. 1912 to 1933, Nicaragua, various leaders, William Howard Taft, Woodrow Wilson, and other presidents, occupied Nicaragua to control the government and suppress rebels. 1913 in Mexico, Woodrow Wilson, ambassador-supported coup, led to occupation of Veracruz in 1914. And you get the idea. It just goes on and on. Woodrow Wilson. I mean, a number by Woodrow Wilson, including Haiti, Dominican Republic, Honduras. And so the one in the Dominican Republic, the Marines, U.S. Marines invaded, enforced a resignation, and occupied the freaking country. Supposedly all without congressional approval. That's what I specifically asked Grok to put together. So 1920, Honduras, Woodrow Wilson defended regime from a strike. 1948 in Costa Rica, Harry S. Truman supported opposition in Civil War. 1949, also Truman encouraged a military coup. 1953 in Iran, Dwight D. Eisenhower backed a coup over oil interests involving military elements. Guatemala, Dwight D. Eisenhower, 1954, supported a military coup with airstrikes and proxy forces. Democratic Republic of the Congo in 1960, Dwight D. Eisenhower provided arms and logistics for coup and execution. And we've got John F. Kennedy. We have a number of them from John F. Kennedy, including in Cuba, Dominican Republic, Iraq, and South Vietnam. And those include the Bay of Pigs invasion, supplied weapons to assassins, also supporting armed groups for an overthrow, and providing air support and special forces for a coup. That happened in South Vietnam. In Brazil, Lyndon B. Johnson, he sent the Navy and the Air Force to support a military coup. In Chile, 1973, Richard Nixon provided intelligence and logistics for a military coup. In Grenada, Ronald Reagan, an invasion, Operation Urgent Fury, to overthrow the government in Grenada, again without congressional approval. 1989 in Panama, Manuel Noriega, that was by George H.W. Bush, an invasion, Operation Just Cause, to capture Noriega. And in 2011, Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, I thought it was Omar Gaddafi. Anyway, Barack Obama, NATO-led airstrikes and military intervention to support rebels. So, and that's just as of 2011. Maybe the entirety of the sources that Grok dug through, which consist of Wikipedia, History.com, Robert Clifton Robinson.com, Constitutioncenter.org, and YaleLawJournal.org. I just simply think that they haven't updated these websites since Trump's move to arrest Nicholas Maduro. But anyway, so this is one list that I came up with. While we're on the subject of them insisting that Trump has no authority. This has never happened before. A president's never done anything like this before. How dare he? He must get congressional approval. So there's his whole statement. I guess I'll repost it if you really want to read his statement. There's a direct link to my X profile in the description below, and you can check that out. I don't think you need to be signed into X, so you don't have to have an X account to view posts on X, I don't believe. All right, Rep. Jason Crow. Donald Trump says he'll now run Venezuela. He's focusing his time and your taxpayer dollars on nation building and foreign wars. Meanwhile, he refuses to spend a penny on your healthcare or making life more affordable for you. Paul A. Pula. Mexican President Sheinbaum isn't happy Maduro was captured. Figures she's owned by the cartels, and she probably is. Now, she's not a Democrat politician. However, she voiced her displeasure as to what Trump did. It was a quick video, so I figured why not include it.
Mañana hicimos un posicionamiento junto con la Secretaría de Relaciones Exteriores por parte del Gobierno de México. Nosotros defendemos la doctrina Estrada y lo que representa la política exterior de nuestro país, que está establecida en la Constitución, que está en contra de las intervenciones y a favor de la solución pacífica de cualquier conflicto. De igual manera, el artículo 2 de la Carta de Naciones Unidas establece claramente que no debe haber intervención militar, sino una solución multilateral dentro del marco de Naciones Unidas. Ese es nuestro posicionamiento. Por eso condenamos esta intervención.
Yeah, but see, here's the problem. We didn't invade the country. We simply arrested 2 individuals within the country. That's what happened. I'd be curious to know how often the Mexican president, Sheinbaum, has met with Nicholas Maduro. You think that they've ever met each other before? It wouldn't surprise me if they have. See what Grok comes up with. I would assume they've probably met on at least a couple of occasions, but no, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has not met with Nicholas Maduro. Okay. Well, honestly, I didn't know. That's why I wanted to ask the question. All right, so Joaquin Castro, I think it's Joaquin Castro, Trump risked the lives of American troops and killed at least 40 people in Venezuela in pursuit of oil and profit. Congress must stop this reckless and illegal regime change war. Again, not a regime, because he wasn't the rightful president. He's a Texas congressman. Of course, he's a Democrat. He's got the Democrat badge right there. All right, so let's hear what he has to say. It's less than a minute.
Donald Trump made it clear what this war and this action was about.
There is no war. There wasn't a war. There is no war. There's no military in Venezuela right now.
It was about regime change, about oil, about going after valuable resources, and about land.
It's about land, huh?
The president speak today and watching the action overnight, I'm even more disturbed because it's as if the president didn't learn any of the lessons from Iraq or Afghanistan.
Yeah, notice how he didn't mention Libya with Benghazi, because Obama did that. He only wants to mention countries in which Republican presidents had done, which, by the way, Iraq and Afghanistan, both of those had congressional approval. I guarantee they did, because I looked it up before, and they did. Iraq, Operation Iraqi Freedom, the Afghanistan, the name escapes me right now, but yeah, both of those instances that he's citing did have congressional approval, actually.
Didn't learn any of the lessons on regime change, and he's done a complete 180.
No regime change.
As a candidate who pitched himself to the American people as a peace president, and now is taking...
Yeah, well, he ended how many now? 9? I think he's up to 9 wars that he's ended so far as president. How many wars has any Democrat president ended in, I don't know, like the last 60 years?
To war in Venezuela.
Or ever, for that matter.
And is threatening to take us to war in places like Colombia and Mexico as well.
Yeah, because Democrats, they're so pro-drugs. They love it when Americans are on drugs. They love it when they're hooked on drugs, because then they can't take care of themselves. They can't be gainfully employed for the most part, unless you're pretty high functioning. So you just have to be desperate. You have to rely on the welfare state, which Democrats absolutely love. Senator Ruben Gallego, Venezuela's freedom must come from the Venezuelans, not from the United States. Okay, we'll tell that to the Venezuelans.
Ruben Gallegos, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros. La primera pregunta,
claro, man, it's all in Spanish.
Impresión general, su opinión sobre lo que ha pasado.
Lo que ocurrió hoy es ilegal. Lo más importante, nosotros como americanos.
All right, whatever. I don't understand Spanish, but I will be fair and repost it. So if you want to hear it and you happen to speak Spanish, it would have been nice if they included some subtitles. I mean, like, come on, dude. Yeah, even his post was in Spanish. X automatically translated it into English. All right, so Senator Angela also Brooks, the founders were explicit. There are 3 co-equal branches of government. Because he did not seek approval from Congress, the president is likely engaged in an illegal strike. Nope, not true. It wasn't a strike. It was an arrest, which continues to set a dangerous precedent. I swear, dude, these Democrats don't have a fucking clue what's happening. The founders wanted Congress to be a bulwark against this kind of executive overreach. The president should be laser focused on improving the quality of life and making life more affordable for Americans instead of engaging in regime change abroad. Again, no regime change. Barely ratioed, but she got a little bit ratioed for that. Rep. Gwen Moore, my statement on the unconstitutional military actions in Venezuela at the direction of Donald Trump. And let's see what she has to say. Congresswoman Gwen Moore, the unconstitutional military actions in Venezuela, beginning with deadly and unjustified boat attacks, using military, or not military, well, probably using military intelligence, but also using U.S. government intelligence agencies to determine that they are transporting drugs, and those drugs are finding their way directly to the United States. I would say they're kind of justified in doing so. But again, Democrats are pro-drugs. They absolutely love drugs. They love this quote-unquote war on drugs. They want it to be ongoing. There's a lot of NGOs that make a lot of money off of it. A lot of these quote-unquote nonprofits and activist organizations. Plus, I don't think that any red states have made dangerous drugs legal, but I know there's certainly been some blue states who have. Even in New York City, they've got drug paraphernalia vending machines, for fuck's sakes. So anyway, the president has now recklessly escalated the military action, endangering American lives without any legitimate national security rationale. Oh my God, that's hilarious. Without any legitimate national security rationale. Again, they are pro-drug until the cows come home. Trump's justification for this aggression continues to be lacking. If he was truly concerned about drug trafficking, he wouldn't have pardoned a drug trafficker who helped bring in thousands of pounds of cocaine into the United States. Actually, I think it was thousands of kilograms, not pounds, but I'm sure she probably doesn't know the difference. The other rationale he has offered relates to private property rights, which is even more troubling. And I'm deeply troubled by the president, again, skirting Congress, this time to invade and now attempt to run a country at the expense of our brave service members and apparently the taxpayer. Now, to be fair, Trump did say that there's going to be U.S. government involvement with the transfer of power, and he did seem to allude to the fact that possibly the U.S. military may be involved. I don't think that the U.S. Navy is moving from their position off the coast of Venezuela, so I got questions for that. I was scratching my head when he said that too. So, I mean, she's not entirely wrong in that part of her statement because, I mean, attempting to run the country, not sure what that's going to look like. But anyway, so the speaker needs to call us back to Washington now. Congress is a co-equal branch of government and cannot be a bystander as America again tries regime change in another nation-building misadventure. Republicans in Congress must join us in checking this president and reasserting our constitutional authority. All right, and we'll roll on to the next one from Patrick Bet David, who's obviously not a Democrat, but he did repost this from Pete Buttigieg, so I figured I might as well just include both. Didn't you tweet this in 2020? What did he tweet in 2020? The illegitimate takeover of Venezuelan National Assembly is further evidence that dictator Maduro will stop at nothing to consolidate his grip on power. I stand behind Juan Guaido and the Venezuelan people as they strive to reclaim their democracy and defend their rights. That was back on January 6th of 2020. Are you no longer with Venezuelan people who are celebrating the fall of Maduro, or are you just playing politics? Which one is it? And this is the post that he's referring to. From Pete Buttigieg, it's an old and obvious pattern, an unpopular president failing on the economy and losing his grip on power at home. Yeah, that's why he's the first Republican president that won the popular majority in 20 years. Decides to launch a war for regime change abroad. The American people don't want to run a foreign country while our leaders fail to improve life in this one. Yeah, well, look, there is an argument to be made about the middle class. Life is pretty hard for the middle class right now. No thanks to Biden. No thanks to China dropping the COVID bomb, probably with the help of Democrats, I might add. But, you know, that conspiracy theories for another video. All right. So anyway, U.S. Rep. Brittany Pedersen. While Maduro is an illegitimate and brutal leader, Trump absolutely should not be dragging us into a war with Venezuela. Sending U.S. forces into Venezuela to snatch a foreign leader in the middle of the night is illegal and unconstitutional. Dude, U.S. government had an arrest warrant. You dumbass. Only Congress has the power to declare war, not one unhinged president. No war was declared. You idiot. We need immediate answers from this administration. The American people deserves transparency. Look, man, they're fully counting on their constituency to have absolutely no political IQ whatsoever. They just, and frankly, a lot of them do. Or a lot of them don't have any, any political intelligence at all, which explains why so many of them are still voting Democrat today. Tina Smith, this unauthorized strike will embolden our adversaries and competitors. It's compromising our global economic and security interests. Doesn't seem like America first to me. I would say, if anything, it's doing the opposite of compromising global economic and security interests, because now there's a pretty good argument to be made that Venezuelan oil is going to find its way into the global market within a short period of time. Again, up to $17 trillion worth of oil is ready for tapping in Venezuela, and they've done it before. You might remember the Citgo gas stations. I could be wrong, but I believe Citgo was Venezuela gas. And we used to have Citgo gas stations all over the place when I was a kid, like back in the 90s and in the 2000s. So yeah, compromising global economic security interests. Don't really see that happening because of the insane amount of oil that Venezuela has. But anyway, moving on. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. Trump's bombing of Venezuela, kidnapping of Maduro, and attempting to run the country are brazen violations of our Constitution and international law. It will endanger U.S. lives, destabilize the region, and cost us billions of dollars. I think it would do the opposite if we tap the oil in Venezuela. Congress must stop this endless war and hold Trump accountable. Because the war in Venezuela has been going on forever. This magical, mysterious, made-up war that's the U.S. has been engaged with in Venezuela. It's just been going on forever and ever. It's going to go on forever and ever. Senator Lisa Blunt Rochester, for months now, the Trump administration has conducted military operations in Venezuela with no warning, no legal authority, and no explanation provided to Congress. Now we know why. Oh my God, dude, another one. The president has unilaterally carried out military activity in the Caribbean and circumvented congressional approval as required by the Constitution because he knew that Congress would not support a senseless and short-sighted regime change mission, none of which are actually happening. They went so far as to lie to Congress during our recent briefing, saying specifically that their priority was not forceful regime change. Regime change, regime change, regime change. I mean, like it's like some Democrats understand that Maduro was not the legitimate president, but because Trump did it, it's all bad. But then there's other Democrats like this one who believes that Maduro is the legitimate president and Trump is engaging in regime change. It's hilarious, man, how fractured the Democrat Party really is. The U.S. military is not the president's personal army. If this continues, nothing stops him from sending American troops around the world to carry out his own reckless foreign policy decisions, which thus far have already negatively impacted our standing on the global stage and continue to erode further the separation of powers enshrined in our Constitution. Look, man, should I actually bring this thing up again? The fact that there were so many instances of presidents overthrowing regimes and being involved directly with other regimes in other countries around the world without congressional approval. It's happened many, many, many times. And they want to make it sound like that Trump is the first one to ever do that. If President Trump was actually concerned about keeping Americans safe from increased foreign drug trafficking, he wouldn't have pardoned Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez for the same crime he captured Maduro for. His motives are clear. He said it himself, use U.S. military forces to seize control of Venezuela's natural resources and distract from the crisis of affordabilities that he is ignoring on our own soil. The administration must immediately brief Congress on its legal justification for this decision and its plan going forward. Congress must take action on Senator Kane's bipartisan war powers resolution to prevent further escalation. And we'll dig into a couple of comments here. Venezuelan journalist Germania Rodriguez Polio on Maduro. Do not for a moment let your hatred and disdain for Donald Trump have you defending the dictator of my country. We Venezuelans are very, very happy that our dictator has been arrested. Let's hear what she has to say. It's less than a minute.
Now a message to my English-speaking friends, because I'm already seeing people are organizing protests, hands off Venezuela, let's defend Maduro.
The brain-dead rabble.
Dictators. Do not, for a moment, let your hatred and disdain for Donald Trump, an unsavory character, have you defending the dictator of my country that was destroyed by him and Chavez and their system 20 years ago.
Yep, too late for that.
We Venezuelans are very, very happy that our dictator has been arrested, removed, and will be put through a trial. It's the first time we're seeing justice in 26 years. Now let's hope that they get the rest of the criminals out of Venezuela, and then we can return home.
And you know what? Speaking of which, some of these Obama-era judges, Clinton-era judges, some of those activist leftist federal judges, how long is it going to be before one of those judges order the immediate release of Maduro because they read too much into this whole, like, Democrats, he didn't have constitutional authority. He acted unilaterally to arrest him. And you're going to see, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a federal judge, like, order the immediate release of Maduro. Anyway, so... message from a Venezuelan. Where are all of you liberals? Here's another one. Let's hear this.
Venezuela. People are criticizing Trump for what he did in Venezuela. They say he bombed and kidnapped our president.
Wrong.
No. Let me be clear.
Oh, yeah, and also, by the way, which I think I'm going to get to later in this video, I definitely covered it in yesterday's video, that the bombings that occurred by our military forces, they were bombing... what are they called? Like a counter-strike vehicles or whatever. It's military vehicles parked around the city that are used to shoot at planes. That's what they were taking out. That's what they were bombing. And I showed quite a few videos yesterday showing the aftermath of that they struck these large trucks that had missiles attached to them that they could point up and shoot at any enemy planes or what have you. So anyway.
That man was never our president. He's a dictator.
They didn't bomb any buildings.
We didn't vote for him. Our elections were stolen. And when we protested, our kids were sent to prison. Minors were tortured. Girls were forced to prostitute themselves in prisons just to get...
and they were literally run over.
Get a piece of bread. And where were all of you then? Where were all of you, liberals? Where were all of you? Where were all of you? You said nothing. You did nothing. But now you suddenly care about international law?
Absolutely.
I mean, now you talk
Spare
about
me.
human rights? Maduro didn't lead Venezuela. He kidnapped an entire country. So, no, Trump didn't kidnap anyone. No, he did not. He removed our kidnapper. And for that, we're thankful. You can divide politics all you want. But don't tell Venezuelans, do not tell Venezuelans how to feel about being free from a dictatorship.
Absolutely. And yeah, price fixing was something that I believe Maduro was engaged with, like a comment on the bread that I don't know the exact dollar number, but let's just use $3 as an example, that that nobody, no business, no company, no producer who produces bread, they can't charge more than $3 for a bag of bread, but it costs $5 to produce the bread because eggs are expensive, flour, yeast. So the materials to make the bread, the electricity, and all of that, and the staffing and everything that goes into making bread, manufacturing bread, it costs an average of $5 for a bag of bread in Venezuela to produce the bread. But because of price fixing, they were banned, or it was illegal to sell bread for any more than $3. So what ended up happening to the bread? Well, they quit producing it because they weren't going to make a bunch of bread at a $2 loss per loaf of bread. So everybody in Venezuela just simply ran out of bread because nobody wanted to make bread because it cost more to make it than they could sell it for. That's why price fixing is just absolutely reckless beyond belief. Did you bitch? Then after $8 billion wasted, what does that have to do with first trip abroad since taking office? U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris visited Guatemala and Mexico this week as part of the Biden administration's plan to address the root causes of migration in Northern Triangle nations of Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. I remember that speech she gave. She said, "Don't come. Just don't come." The visit came days after the White House announced private sector investments in the three countries by 12 U.S. companies, in addition to $4 billion promised in government aid. What did Harris achieve on her trip? How significant is the announced private investment initiative, and what needs to happen for the aimed at improving public-private partnerships? The initiative generated more than $4.2 billion in private sector commitments. Okay, I'm not sure exactly what this has to do with anything, but anyway. Tears of joy. Venezuelans are literally crying tears of joy, all because President Trump captured Maduro. So that's another instance. I did show that on my video yesterday, and it's Spanish only. Like they were only speaking Spanish, so didn't understand what he was saying. But he was definitely crying, literally crying tears of joy. Looks like somebody else leaving a video comment. You people are this nation's criminal cartel. You consistently prove it with each passing day. I find it very hard to believe you care about anyone's safety. Bravo, Trump. Fix it. It is your job. Did you confer with Joe on this blunty? Trump talks tough on Venezuela, but it admires thugs and dictators like Nicholas Maduro. As president, I will stand with the Venezuelan people and for democracy. Yeah, which did not happen. And that was posted in 2020, which just so happened to be the same year that an arrest warrant was issued on Nicholas Maduro. But did Joe Biden do anything about it? No, obviously not. All right, so let's roll on to the next thing. Our next post, Rep. Melanie Stansbury, regime change, narco-terrorism, and oil. All of these seem to be competing theories of an administration seeking to justify the use of U.S. military to target, invade, and now occupy a foreign country without the consent of Congress and the people. But here's the thing. We are a nation of laws, and for months, the administration has been carrying out strikes and military actions that directly undermine the U.S. Constitution and rule of law. While Maduro clearly is a corrupt and illegitimate thug who oversaw the destabilization and suffering of millions, and then there's the giant, but we totally love Maduro, the fact remains that the U.S. president is acting on authority he does not have, while millions of Americans are without basic necessities. That is hilarious. It is on Congress and the people to hold him accountable. I say that's hilarious, millions of Americans without basic necessities, because I think America is the only country in the world where impoverished Americans, they are more obese than the richest Americans. So, all right, anyway, let's move on to the next. Senator Maggie Hassan. Oh my God, dude, all these long-winded posts, basically just copy-pasting from each other. The people of New Hampshire do not want to be dragged into another foreign war, especially by a president who failed to articulate a clear strategy or purpose for attacking his sovereign nation. And in so doing, so destabilizing much of the Western Hemisphere and calling into question our country's commitment to a rules-based international order. Nicholas Maduro was a brutal dictator who trafficked drugs across the world and helped Americans' adversaries thrive. But I have deep concerns about the president's unilateral decision to launch a large-scale military operation on foreign soil and with no clear strategy to limit our involvement and prevent us from being dragged into another endless war. See, I'm telling you, man, they're pro-drugs. Our Constitution vests the power to declare war in Congress to ensure that the American people have a voice in deciding whether to put our service members in our country at risk. No war was declared, not by President Trump or anyone else. The president needs to provide information about how he plans to deal with the instability that this action creates and what comes next, and I'm sure they will. In the meantime, I'm praying for the service members who were injured in this operation and for the brave men and women who served in our armed forces around the world. Yeah, I believe it was like 2 or 3 service members were injured. The Department of War, the administration did not give an exact number, and they didn't give the condition of the injuries from those service members. I'm sure we'll probably get an update at some point. Apparently, a helicopter was hit by enemy returning fire, probably Maduro's bodyguards. So it took a hit, but it was still flyable. They didn't lose the helicopter. There were no casualties. Yeah, and I don't even think there's even an official number of Venezuelan casualties, but any casualties that there were of Maduro's henchmen. All right, Rep. Jimmy Gomez, his is short and maybe not so sweet. This military action is illegal without congressional authorization. That's why I supported war powers resolutions last month to prevent exactly this kind of unchecked use of force, resolutions that House Republicans blocked. All right, let's be absolutely clear. Trump's military action in Venezuela is unlawful without approval from Congress. There's no clear objective, no endgame, and no plan for what comes next. This is a dangerous recipe for chaos in the region. And while he escalates conflicts abroad, Trump is ignoring real crises at home, from rising healthcare costs, Obamacare, say it, Democrats, say Obamacare, to disaster recovery. This isn't leadership. I mean, look, like disaster recovery, what about the Pacific Palisades? What was it, like 8,000 homes were completely torched because of just the failed policies of California. They couldn't even keep their water reserves filled up. No water in the fire hydrants. They really couldn't do a damn thing about it except let the Pacific Palisades burn down to the ground. But has there been a single building built or a single house that's been replaced since that happened? I don't think so. I don't think that's happened because Democrat politicians in California, they refuse to remove the red tape. Instead, they're actively trying to pass legislation that will seize property in the Pacific Palisades to build low-income housing. The state Senate already introduced a bill just 3 weeks after the Palisades burned to the ground to attempt to seize land from homeowners or their empty lots, which are now empty, no thanks to the Democrats, and use that property for low and homeless housing. And of course, the public found out about it. There was a lot of outrage, so they didn't eliminate the bill. They just tabled it. They put it up on the shelf until at which time that nobody notices that they put it out and vote on it and pass it into law. I'm sure they'll do all of that very, very quietly. And then they'll just start building low-income housing in the Pacific Palisades. Anyway, Rep. Chantel Brown, this president is out of control. He had no authority to invade Venezuela, offered no explanation for why this was necessary, and has given no strategy for what comes next. Republicans must join us in stopping this president from dragging us into another reckless conflict. I got this from Rep. Greg Stanton. President Trump ran in 2016, attacking the Bush administration for dragging us into an endless war in Iraq. Now he's repeating it in Venezuela, claiming his administration is now running that country. It also sends a dangerous signal to Russia and China. If the U.S. could do it, so can they. All right, let's give this a watch.
I don't know what the legal authority is for the president to say this morning that now we're running Venezuela.
There's the image that I was looking for. There it is. Nicholas Maduro in custody on a plane, or it could have been aboard the USS Iwo Jima when that picture was taken, but he's in his tracksuit, appears to probably have handcuffs on, holding a bottle of water. He's got the old man sunglasses, which I'm sure are blacked out so he can't see. And yeah, so in my opinion, they didn't share this photo to humiliate him, as the Democrats would lead you to believe. They took that image to prove to the vice president of Venezuela that he is indeed alive. That's a proof of life photo.
A country of close to 30 million people. We don't know for how long, how we're going to go about that. What powers do we have to run that?
What happens is that the illegitimate president is removed from Venezuela, and then the actual president that the Venezuelan people voted for becomes president. It's just that simple. Will it be that simple? I don't know. I suppose that's up to Venezuela, really.
We're going to use U.S. resources to operate another country. That's about as far from America first as you can possibly get. And heck, I mean, this president in 2016 ran against the actions in Iraq, the Iraq War.
Which, by the way, did have congressional approval.
Which was one of these
including for Democrats.
Wars, criticizing the Bush family. And now we're taking out a president of another country without...
He is not a president of Venezuela. He was not the president of Venezuela. He may have been when they first voted for him. Maybe that was legitimate. But when the election was over in July of 2024, he was not elected president. So he is no president, dummy.
Plan for how to operate it and saying we run the country. I'm very concerned about what that means for the future. And I'm also concerned about the message that this sends to Russia in their actions in Ukraine, and China, who is threatening Taiwan, and the United States needs to stand firm.
Yeah, well, the United States stands in the way of that. And if Vladimir Putin and if the Russians could fly in and do this elaborate operation capable, like to the level of the United States' capability of doing what we did to Maduro, they probably would have done it. And they would do it if they were able to. And again, with China and Taiwan, China could do that with Taiwan, but they just know that there's going to be hell to pay because it's not just the United States' interest. It's many other Western countries that would take action against China if they were to do that. But yeah, no doubt in my mind that China would do exactly that if given the opportunity to do so. All right, so this comes from Marco Foster regarding James Carville. Don't know a lot about this guy. I do know he's a Democrat operative, or at least was at some point, worked with Hillary Clinton. I think he worked with Bill Clinton, something like that, just like some on-the-ground Democrat type dude. So he says, never, ever underestimate what Trump will do to draw attention away from Jeffrey Epstein and the fact that we're getting ready for average people to be plunged into health insurance, Obamacare, that they can't pay while we run up $3 trillion in debt. All right, so let's hear what he has to say. Probably
there are a corrupt group of people. Never, ever underestimate what Trump will do to try to survive and draw attention away from Jeffrey Epstein and the fact that we're getting ready to be average people are plunged into health insurance that they can't pay while we run up $3 trillion in debt and giving people make over $500,000 a year massive tax cuts. That's what's really going on in this country. You need to know it. And you need to change it come November of this year.
Man, dude, Democrats, the only time they lie is when they open their mouths. Never trust a Democrat, especially a Southern Democrat at that, which is pretty pathetic. I mean, it would sure be nice if both of our political parties could be in any way trustworthy. But, I mean, absolutely, the Democrat Party is way, way less trustworthy, especially these days. Senator Elissa Slotkin, despite all the talking points to the media and by cabinet members directly to senators last month, this was never about stopping the drug cartels. If it were, President Trump wouldn't have pardoned drug kingpin Juan Orlando Hernandez. And following up from this long-ass post, did I already read this? I have a feeling I might have already read this. I would have recognized the 27,000 troop thing. So President Trump's decision to bomb targets in Venezuela, depose Nicholas Maduro, and run Venezuela continues to be the signature trend of his presidency. Relentless focus on foreign entanglements and looking tough abroad to distract from what's happening to America's pocketbooks. Again, 9 wars that he ended. Foreign entanglements, I think he's doing the exact opposite. But anyway, so instead of action on healthcare costs or housing or energy bills, all the Democrats have done to make absolutely unaffordable for Americans. Americans get military action in Iran, Iraq, Nigeria, Somalia, Syria, Yemen, Caribbean, Pacific. Probably all countries, like where's Libya? I don't see Libya in this one. And now a long-term engagement in Venezuela. Despite all the talking points in the media and by cabinet members directly to senators last month, this was never about stopping the drug cartels. If it were, Trump wouldn't have pardoned Juan Orlando Hernandez, and he'd be going after Mexican cartels that move the fentanyl that's killed hundreds of thousands of Americans, not fishing boats full of cocaine or ultimately the Venezuelan oil fields. Look, I'm sure we're going to get to that too in due time, especially since the Trump administration has already listed a number of cartels, I believe Mexican cartels also, as foreign terrorist organizations. If this were the case, he wouldn't have labeled them terrorist organizations. The president laid out his plan of regime change. He now says he wants to run Venezuela, and particularly Venezuelans' vast oil reserves. Maduro is a bad man, and the people of Venezuela deserve better. But we know that regime change isn't as simple as removing one leader. While there are comparisons to the arrest of Manuel Noriega in Panama in 1989, let's not forget that the U.S. sent in over 27,000 troops and lost 23 service members in the process. The bottom line is that President Trump wants to look tough by attacking countries abroad to distract from his failure to attack the core issue of the cost of living at home. And we'll move on to the next Rep. Greg Stanton. The Constitution is never a moot point. It's a live point, and it makes clear that the powers belong to Congress. Presidents can only defend against attacks. That means President Trump must have Congress's authorization before engaging in further military action in Venezuela. 43 presidents.
It's a moot point at this point, though, because They have gone into Venezuela. They have removed the president, and he is soon to be indicted.
And they didn't bomb any buildings. They didn't kill any Venezuelans on the ground.
Of who should have done what when.
Yeah, if you're suggesting the United States Constitution is a moot point, I would take issue with that. I think the United States Constitution is the preeminent document in our country and has to be obeyed.
Yeah, but when it comes to serving or executing an arrest warrant, pretty sure he doesn't need Congress's approval to do that.
And if there has been an action taken in violation of the United States Constitution, we can't sweep that under the rug. It is not a moot point.
Notice how he said
very,
if.
very much a live point right now that we have to take into consideration. The president should go before Congress right now. Let's have an up or down vote of the United States Congress about any further military action in Venezuela.
Is that essentially a moot point?
All right, so that's that. And we'll roll on to the next one. Ron Wyden. This is an illegal intervention in a country that poses no threat to the United States. Yeah, see, no threat. I'm telling you, man, the pro-drugs. Trump is trying to distract from the fact that he tanked our economy and kicked millions off healthcare. Now, the Democrats did a fantastic job of that themselves. Congressional Republicans need to rein Trump in before he gets American troops killed. The Associated Press, that's what he's tagging. Trump says U.S. is going to run Venezuela until transition of power. There are no visible signs the U.S. is controlling the country.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. We've had decades of that. We're not going to let that happen.
All right. So, I don't know, man. Maybe he said that running the country. Maybe he's just trolling Democrats. Maybe he's just playing some 4D chess. All right. I strongly condemn President Trump's unlawful military action in Venezuela. Maduro is an illegitimate ruler, but the president... Oh, wait. Where did it go? But the president cannot send U.S. forces into another country and seize its leader without congressional authorization. Yeah, they can. And he did. The Trump administration has not shown that there was an immediate threat that required acting without Congress. Yeah, dude, tons of people ODing on drugs, for one. And it has not explained how it will keep Venezuela from sliding into chaos, violence, or a dangerous power vacuum. Yeah, but what about all the other cartels in all the other countries? Yeah, we should take all them out, too. Secretaries Hegseth and Rubio recently told Congress this was not about forcing political change, but the administration's actions prove that they lied. This is not a careful national security decision. It's a major escalation that puts Americans in Venezuela and across the region at risk and could drag the United States into another conflict without a plan or public support. It also sends an alarming international precedent by normalizing the use of U.S. force to remove foreign leaders. The administration must brief Congress immediately on the legal basis for this action, what intelligence they relied on, and how they plan to prevent further violence and protect citizens, and what they will do to avoid wider instability in the region. Yeah, all they got to do is just, open up the file jacket and show, here, arrest warrant, Maduro, the end. That's why we did what we did. James Tallarico. Last year, Trump promised. Is this going to be the end? No. Okay. I was wondering if that was the end of the Democrat post, but I don't think I'm quite there just yet. Anyway, so he says last year Trump promised American oil executives a great deal if they donated $1 billion to his campaign. Today, he gave them Venezuela, home to the largest oil reserves in the world. This new war is not only illegal and reckless, it is deeply corrupt. So let's see, is there any mention of $1 billion here? Or is there any mention of a great deal? I don't think so. While Mr. Trump said little about how the United States would be running Venezuela, he insisted it won't cost us anything because American oil companies would rebuild the energy infrastructure in Venezuela, which holds vast reserves of oil. We're going to run the country right, Mr. Trump said as he turned to oil. It's going to make a lot of money. And I'm no expert on Venezuela oil, but I believe that there were other oil companies from other countries that were participating in extracting oil in Venezuela way before any of this happened, before Maduro took over. So that's definitely not anything new. And this whole $1 billion thing to his campaign, not seeing that mentioned anywhere. Sounds like he's just making that shit up out of thin air. All right, Rep. Greg Stanton, Maduro was not a legitimate president of Venezuela. It's a good thing he's gone, but it matters how we go about this. Our Constitution and the War Powers Act require the president to come before Congress and get authorization to use force. President Trump has not done that. Didn't we already hear from this dude? Where was that? I thought I already... Yeah, here we go. Yeah, all right. So I'm not going to play that because we already listened to that. All right, Rep. Don Beyer. No one should be under any illusions that what Trump did here was about ousting dictators. Trump loves dictators. It's called peace through strength, dummy. And anyway, reporter, the U.S. has something of a mixed track record of ousting dictators. Not with me, or President, not with me, they don't. With me, they've had a perfect track record of winning. If you look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, you've only had victories. I don't know.
The U.S. has something of a mixed track record of ousting dictators without necessarily a plan for what comes afterwards. Did that weigh on your decision?
Well, that's when we had different presidents, but with me, that's not true. With me, we've had a perfect track record of winning. We win a lot, and we win. If you look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, you look at the Midnight Hammer. Midnight Hammer was incredible. Right now, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. We have essentially
the
peace
Abraham
in the Middle
Accords
East because of that. If we weren't successful with Midnight Hammer, you wouldn't have
rebuilding Gaza
peace in the Middle East. So, with me, you've had a lot of victory. You've had only victories. You've had no losses. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what this has to do with Trump cozying up to dictators, because that's what he's trying to allude to, obviously. All right, Martin Heinrich, let's be clear. President Trump has acted without any legal authorization from Congress. His capture of Maduro, no matter how terrible a leader Maduro is, breaks our nation's laws, tarnishes our global leadership, puts Americans in Venezuela and our armed forces at risk. It sets an extremely dangerous precedent. Americans want to lower cost, transparency, and justice, not endless armed conflicts and regime change wars. Okay, again, why did you give over $100 billion to Ukraine then? President Trump's actions do not have the consent of the American people and should be condemned by Congress. Nadia Whitcomb, MP, Donald Trump's bombing of Venezuela, like they bombed vehicles, didn't bomb any buildings, is an illegal attack on a sovereign nation. It's a blatant grab for Venezuela oil, risk the lives of innocent civilians. All of us who care about international law must condemn this. Now, you know what they're really worried about? They're worried that that gasoline is going to drop to $1.79 like it did in 2019 when Trump was president the first time. That's what Democrats are really worried about. They don't want our gas to be so cheap because we'll look to President Trump as the one who made that happen. Senator Chris Van Hollen, don't be fooled. You can't both claim this was simply an execution of an arrest warrant and say the U.S. is now running Venezuela and grabbing its oil resources. Trump just admitted this was a clear regime change play to enrich U.S. oil companies and his billionaire buddies. And Trump and his cronies could try to dress this up, but it's an illegal act of war to replace Maduro and grab Venezuela's oil for his billionaire buddies, blah, blah, blah. And I'll repost this one because, I'm not going to read the entire statement. But that'll be there, a direct link to my profile. Or you could go to Chris Van Hollen. You could check that out. He posted this at 10:52 a.m. yesterday. And let's see, what else do we got? Senator Alyssa Slotkin, President Trump's decision to bomb targets of Venezuela, depose Nicholas Maduro, and run Venezuela continues the signature trend of his presidency. Relentless focus on foreign entanglements and looking tough abroad to distract from what's happening to Americans' pocketbooks. So instead of action on healthcare costs or housing or energy bills, Americans get military action in Iran, Iraq, Nigeria, Somalia, Syria, Yemen. Or wait a minute, did I already read this? I think I already read all this. Yeah, I did. I remember that distinctively. I don't know how I'd put that in here twice. Let's see. Okay, I don't think I did this one. Overnight, the U.S. president ordered the invasion of Venezuela and capture of its president. It wasn't Venezuela's president. He wasn't Venezuela's president because he did not win in 2024. While Maduro clearly is a corrupt and illegitimate thug who oversaw the destabilization and suffering of millions. But the fact remains that the U.S. president is acting on authority he does not have. That is what the U.S. Congress can and must do. 43 presidents. And again, that's Rep. Melanie Stansbury. Oh my God, dude. I'll give her a minute. I'm not giving her 6 minutes. But again, like I've done, if I don't cover it completely, I will repost it.
Hey everyone, and I know that so many of you woke up this morning to the deeply disturbing news.
Yeah, she's ultra triggered. That's why she droned on for 6 minutes.
Strikes on the country of Venezuela, and that U.S. military forces had invaded Caracas and had captured President Maduro and his wife and had brought him back to the United States.
Arrest warrant.
I'm going to take a few moments today to talk about.
You're not taking a few moments. You're taking freaking 6 moments.
How we got here and what Congress can do to rein in this president who is not only overstepping his constitutional and legal authorities, but clearly is completely out of control.
Okay, well, I'm positive that we've already heard every talking point that she's about to go through. because all of these Democrats, they're just copy pasting each other for the most part. But I would say just ask your everyday Venezuelan lady. Quit trying to grandstand on it.
If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Check out The Swamp Monday through Friday at 11 p.m. Eastern with segments dropping on the daily. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.